Okay, we'll do now the Maimer in Kuntresim in Chelik Beis. We'll do the Maimer for Yutas Kislev, which the Rebbe said, and Tovshin Lametes, which begins with Omar Abba Oishia, Mai Diksiv Tzidkas Pirzoyne Be Yisrael, quoting the Gemara that the Eibishter, that Tzidkas, this was a righteousness, this was a favor that the Eibishter did with the Yidden, that he had scattered them amongst the nation, as he will explain, that even during the time that Yidden in one community are not able to perform Torah mitzvahs because of the restrictions from the government, and they can't do Torah mitzvahs, and still there's other places that Yidden still can fulfill mitzvahs, and that way, by other people doing the mitzvahs, they grant them that opportunity. This says in the beginning that this was said Tovshin Lamates, and then later on, this Maimer was printed in the booklet for Yutas Kislev Tovshin Nun. That was for the Chag HaGeula Yutas Kislev, which is upon us at that time, which is the redemption of the Alter Rebbe from his imprisonment in the year Tov Kuf Nun Tes. This was printed on the 15th of Kislev Shnas Tovshin Yud. This Maimer is based on the Maimer that starts off with the same heading, Tzidkas Pirzoynoi, that has been printed in the booklets, has the drushim of the chasana. It has the chasana Mamorim that the previous Rebbe said during the wedding of the Rebbe. All right, so we'll start. Siyayte Deshmaya Yutas Kislev Tovshin Lamed Tes. Omar Rab Oishaya, says Rabbi Oishaya, Mai Diksiv. What is the meaning of what it says? Tzidkas Pirzoynoi Be Yisrael. So the pasuk says that it is a righteousness. And he touches the word here, Pirzoynoi. We'll see later on a little bit different, but he touches right in the beginning from the Gemara. Pirzoynoi means that Hashem scattered us, like he was mefazer. He scattered us amongst the Yidden. He's scattered us. So what does it mean? So the Gemara says that Tzedakah also HaKadosh Baruch Hu Be Yisrael. That this is a righteousness, a favor, basically, a charity that Hashem did by the Yidden, Shepizrom Lebein Ha'umes, that he scattered them amongst the nation. The Eibishter did us a favor that he started the nation. So how so? So my father, the Rebbe, in the Maimer that opens up with this opening, this was said on Yutas Kislev in the year Tofresh Tes during the meal. That was still during the Sheva Brachas of the Rebbe. The Rebbe got married on Yud Dalet Kislev, and this was during the Sheva Brachas. This was on the 19th of Kislev, in the meal. And V'nitvis Bekuntras Drusha Chasna Tofresh Peites. This has been printed in the booklet that it contains the Maimorim of the wedding that was in Tofresh Peites. So what does it say there? He explains, the Frierdiker Rebbe explained in that Maimer in Yutas Kislev, Dal Yidei She Yisrael Mefuzorim Bekamo Medines, through the fact that the Yidden are scattered in many countries. Hine, so this helps them. Sometimes the Yidden are in a certain country, they're oppressed over there. And if they're oppressed in that country, they can't do Torah mitzvahs. So he says, but the Eibishter scattered them in different countries. So even if in one country, we press and we push, the squeeze, the Yidden are squeezed. And they're not allowed. We don't allow them. The country, the government, that country doesn't allow them to study Torah and to observe mitzvahs. Now, there's different levels of not allowing. Sometimes they disallow that there is actually no choice. Mitzvahs, in many mitzvahs, heim anusim mamish, they are totally forced. They're totally faultless. It's not their fault at all. Why? Sometimes you can do a mitzvah even when they don't allow you, but you can defy the government and you can still do it. But sometimes you're totally innocent. You have no possibility. They have no possibility to fulfill those mitzvahs even by self-sacrifice. So it gives an example. Sometimes there's Yidden live in an area, in a community, where it's not possible for them to do mitzvahs. The dogma, for example, when there is a decree of the government, they don't allow the 4 species for sukkahs into the country. So there is simply no 4 species there. There's no way that they can fulfill the mitzvah of esrog and lulav because they don't allow it into the country. And it's not going to help you. Even if you have self-sacrifice, it's impossible to fulfill the mitzvah. So the Eibishter made it in such a way, through the fact that there is Yidden that find themselves in other countries, and they occupy themselves in Torah mitzvahs, they give the power and the strength to also those who find themselves in the place in which there is decrease. So Yidden are, some of them, Nebach, don't have an opportunity to do mitzvahs. Through the mitzvahs that Yidden who live elsewhere perform, that gives strength to the people who live in those places where we can't do the mitzvahs. And it gives them strength, so it helps them, that gives them later on to change things around so that they can start learning Torah and observing mitzvahs. The Eibush, through the other Torah mitzvahs, it helps them to, and it starts gradually. Umin hakal el hakovet, from the light to heavy, meaning you start off a little bit. Bitchila sheyuchlu lekayim es mitzvahs al yidei mesiras nefesh al kopanim. It starts off in the beginning. At least they should be able to do mitzvahs if they want to have self-sacrifice, at least. We're talking about a situation in where they can't even do mitzvahs even with self-sacrifice, but helping them first, it starts off that in a way that they're able to do mitzvahs through at least mesiras nefesh. Now that is called an opportunity, because somebody's going to say, well, we're talking like the mitzvah of, let's say, the 4 species, the Dalet Minim. So why would we say that the person could fulfill the mitzvahs through mesiras nefesh, but you're not supposed to give up your life for the mitzvah of sukkah? Only 3 averos that especially we know is Yorek Val Yaver, but most of the mitzvahs is Yavor. You should transgress. Don't let yourself get killed. Don't do mesiras nefesh. Why are we saying to do mitzvahs through mesiras nefesh is also a possibility, or it is making it a little bit easier than not being able to do it at all, but he can do it to mesiras nefesh. So he brings in the bracket, as it's known there is opinion in the codifier, Shagam Baham Mitzvahs Shaleim Omru, that even in those mitzvahs about which our sages say, Yavir V'al Yaharik, that he should transgress and not let himself get killed, is Rashoyi Lekadish as Hashem V'Limsed Atzma. He is still permitted to sanctify the name of Hashem and to give himself over for Kiddush Hashem. Person is still allowed to do that. So that's considered already a shtickle, somewhat of a level of relief to be able to fulfill the mitzvah with Mesiras Nefesh. But further, they give them strength first to start off by being able to do the mitzvah Mesiras Nefesh. Later on, they won't need self-sacrifice at all. And to the extent it gets even better, they shouldn't have any test, even not things that hold back, things that distract, that hold back. Because they will go out in freedom, and they will be able to occupy themselves in Torah and mitzvahs in a wide way without any restrictions. And Kimaymer Azal, as our sages of blessed memory say, they'll be fulfilled the promise of Kol HaMekayim as HaTorah Me'oini Soifa L'Kayim Ma'isher. Anyone who fulfills first the Torah in while poor, in the end he will fulfill it while he's wealthy, which meaning that these people who were faced with a situation of prevention, that they did not allow them to do Torah mitzvahs, will come to the level that they should be able to do Torah mitzvahs, and that comes through the fact that the other people are doing mitzvahs. Other people are doing mitzvahs, and they give them the koyach and the ois for them to change around in their own status, that they should eventually come to the level of being free and totally do mitzvahs. So one can argue, okay, this applies in a case when there is oppression and when there is a denial, when Yidden can't do Torah mitzvahs. What about, is there righteousness of Hashem when we are living in a free country, in a free world? We don't have any issues of nobody preventing. But there too, the Rebbe says we can extend this metaphorically also to the fact that some Yidden, that sometimes in certain situation, we are actually in exile. We are in captivity by our own Yetzer Hara, who takes control of our lives and doesn't allow us to do and properly a certain mitzvah. The Rebbe is going to metaphorically say that other Yidden, we all have different challenges. One Yid has a challenge in one area, another Yid has another challenge in another area. The fact that we have different challenges, and sometimes the challenges we have are because they're most meaningful, and that's why the Yetzer Hara is actually specifically investing a lot of energy to prevent the Yid from what's important to him. So, but the fact that we have different challenges, and the fact that the other Yid overcomes the challenge that I'm having difficulty, lends support to me for me to overcome my challenge. Let's look inside. Base. Since Torah is eternal, B'chol eis uzman, it is at every time, every period, u'b'chol mokom, in every place, k'mevur b'hamaimer, as explained in the Maimer. Muvon shetzedakah zu, so we understand that this charity, higam b'ha'makoymes This would also be in the places in which there is no decrees against Torah and mitzvahs. So we have to apply it in a time and a place where there's no gezeres, and we're saying that Hashem did the righteousness in the inner meaning of it. Yuvan ze alpi mashekosu kveit kedushas meiricham admur. Now we'll understand it based on what my father-in-law, the Rebbe, writes in the Mamorim of the Chasana in Tov Reish Peites, the above Chasana, that's the Rebbe's wedding. He writes there, Be'inyan mitzvahs pidyon shivuyin sheyeshno gam berichnis. The mitzvah of redeeming captives exists also spiritually. What does it mean? If we examine, what does it mean, a captive? A captive means one who is not able to get out where he is. He's held by against his will. So sometimes we can be captives on a spiritual level without being able to get out. Just as one who physically is in captivity. He sits in incarceration, he sits in jail. He is not able to get out of there. Likewise, also spiritually, there is an idea of captivity. A person can sometimes be held captive, be they yitzrei, in the hand of his inclination. The Yetzer Hara holds him, and he holds him captive. He can't get out of there. Now, he's going to give you an example. We're not talking even in extreme cases. We're talking about even in a case where a person is so overwhelmed, indulged in his business affairs that he can't get out of it. It sort of holds him captive. Valderech, he says in the bracket. Balei asokim, if you have business people, hatrudim, who are occupied, umutrodim, and they're over troubled, biyoser bitirdis iskeyem, in the preoccupation of their businesses. So shehem kishurim, so they're tied, which means shvuyim, they're captives, in those thoughts that confuse, that distract, and they are not able to get out of them. They are held captive. Sometimes to such an extent, you are held back by the Yetzer and by the business, but he's like totally forced into it. He's like no choice. He's forced. He has no choice. He can't get out. Harambam, to use the language that the Rambam says, with regards to halacha, Rambam brings over there by the person, they force him to give a get, but he says the person really wants to be good, but yitzrei hu shetokvei, the reason he is not doing what he's supposed to is because he was attacked by his Yetzer Hara. So we know this, so there is captivity in a spiritual level. What is the tzedakah that Hashem does by scattering out to help us out? And this is the tzedakah in the spiritual sense, al yidei shepizron lebein ha'umes, by saying, the Gemara says, Hashem has scattered us among the nations, even if we're talking about places where there is harvacha, there is no problem, there is equal rights for everybody. There, it's in a wide way. So what is nobody's oppressing us and not allowing us to do Torah mitzvahs. So what is the tzedakah here? When there is a Jewish person who is in captivity in the hands of his Yetzer Hara, God forbid, as it relates to a specific, there's one specific area in the person's life in which he can't control, the Yetzer Hara holds him captive. So the Eibishter helps him. How does he leave? How does he get out from his captivity? Something you can't do. You're held against your will. You can't do it with your own power. Because there is a rule, one who is incarcerated cannot free himself. I think in English there is an expression, you can't raise yourself by your boots. You need somebody else to pick you up. When a person is in a pit, he can't get out of the pit. He needs somebody to pull him out. In the spiritual, you can't pull yourself out from the Yetzer Hara, from that pit. By another Yid who is not in captivity, as it relates to that specific issue that you have, another Yid doesn't have. So the other Yid's ability to who is free and does what he's supposed to do in that subject that you're having challenges, that helps you get out as well. Now, we're not talking about a Yid who is a complete tzaddik. He's also in captivity, but in another area. Because we're saying you're scattered amongst the nation in one place, another place. So the gam kasher apoida oisa mahashivya, even if it's a situation that the one who is redeeming you from captivity, who shall be the yitzra, he is also in captivity in the hands of his yetzer. And also he is also in that same status. He is like helpless, totally forced. Yitzra shetokfei. His yetzer, quoting Losh Rambam that he quoted before, attacks him as it relates to another mitzvah. In other words, he's challenged on another mitzvah without being able to get out of there. And yet that person, while he's challenged in another mitzvah, but not in your mitzvah, helps you get out in your mitzvah. Since with regards to many mitzvahs, he is not in captivity, he is able to do many mitzvahs. And here the Rebbe says, well, how come if he's not in the Yetzer Hara, if he's not in mitzvahs, how come he has a struggle with this specific thing? Because everybody has their personal challenges for them individual, and also every period has its specific challenges. Because the opposition of the evil inclination by every individual is mainly in a different matter. The opposition of the Yetzer Hara is by each person something different. By one person, he wants him not to do one thing, but the other person, he wants him to fail in something else. It's always something different. Why? Now, why we see it also in time. Time-wise, certain times there were very big struggles. The Gemara relates that in the time of the king Menashe, they had a tremendous Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah. Today, if you ask somebody, do you feel like worshiping idols? He says, nah, what? He laughs at you. Why does he have a... But there was a time that serving idols was... I think Gemara explains over there that some people said, hey, what's not such a big deal? How come he failed so miserably? And the Gemara says that it was a different time. People were... the Yetzer Hara for Avodah Zarah was very strong. So therefore we say שהדקמוי שבכל זמן יש עבודה מיוחדת השייכת ביוסר לזמן זה, just like on a time where there is a mitzvah, and there is an avodah, which is specific for that time. The ikir hapituyim v'haisnagdu shel yetzer hara, the main persuasion and the main opposition of the yetzer hara is to prevent this service. Shalochein hanisyonis shebedoir echad shonim hanisyonis bedoiris achedim. That's why also in generations the challenges, the tests that are in one generation are different than the challenges than the tests in other generations. And just like in the days of Menashe, at that time there was the dominance, the Yetzer Hara, there was Avodah Zorah. He wanted to Avodah Zorah. As opposed to the generation that followed, Alachas Kama v'Kama wasn't so strong. And then the Gemara says further, Alachas Kama v'Kama la'achar shekotlu liyitzrot avodah zorah. After they killed, the Gemara relates that they killed the Yetzer Hara of avodah zorah. So then for sure, the Gemara in Yoma and Sanhedrin. So then for sure, there's no such a big deal for us, but the different generations have different Yetzer Haras. So within one period is also. So each person has something specific, and a subject for him, mitzvah, a minhag, whether it's a minhag or a tradition, which is very important to him specifically. Some mitzvahs are very important to a specific person. It's known, explaining the sages of blessed memory. They say, the rabbi asked the other one, Abuch b'may havi zoyer tzvei. Your father, what was he more careful? So, we have to be careful in all mitzvahs, but there has to be a specific mitzvah that everybody is more careful, which means that's the mitzvah which is most important. And that mitzvah is the one that the Yetzer Hara tries mostly to prevent you. The main persuasion and opposition to Yetzer Hara is as far as this matter. By doing the mitzvahs that the Yetzer Hara does not wage war so much. So the person himself, some mitzvahs, he doesn't have that position. By doing the other mitzvahs, that he doesn't wage so much war. So then you redeem from captivity the one whose Yetzer overpowered him in this mitzvah. Apparently, another person by doing the mitzvahs, but it's really in essence, why can't we say the person himself by doing the other mitzvahs that he's not challenged, that gives him a opportunity to help? The Pizrona is because he has different mitzvahs, and by doing the other mitzvahs, it helps him overcome that mitzvah that he has challenged. But over here, it says Shepizin Lebeinu Umas is through the fact that another Yid, as there seems like the one she eats her talk mitzvah, but also in that case as well, by the other person not having that challenges. This is Shem made a charity by Yid, that he scattered them amongst the nation, meaning that the challenges, the Yetzer Hara, doesn't have the same challenges, so another Yid can give the strength to the other one. Why we call this tzedakah? This is a charity. The Eibishter helped us, but why is that tzedakah? So he says this is the greatest form of tzedakah, the pidyon shavuim, which tzedakah chinailis, to redeem from captivity is the greatest level of tzedakah. Ukemevuar b'maimer hanal, as explained in the maimer, shebemitzvah tzedakah pidyon shavuim hu koidem l'chol davar, that the mitzvah tzedakah, if you want to get, when you give tzedakah, the mitzvah of redeeming from captivity, that comes before any other tzedakah. Ve'ein mitzvah gedola kepidyon shavuim. There's no greater mitzvah like as redeeming them from captivity. And this word, when the Eibishter gave us an opportunity to be redeemed, that's a tzedakah. Va'yidei shepizron lebeino umas. Hashem scattered us amongst the nation, which means each one has other challenges amongst the Yetzer Hara. Sheyitzrei shel echad shoinem yitzru shel hasheni. Does one's Yetzer Hara is different than the Yetzer of the other one. That is the way that the mitzvah of tzedakah pidyon shvuim is performed, is through the fact that we one Yid stays strong in his mitzvahs. That's how we are able to fulfill the mitzvah. So this is the idea of tzidkas Pirzoinoi in the spiritual level, that one Yid has the ability to help out the other Yid, and the fact that they do those mitzvahs, those challenges, and I think vice versa. So we're all helping each other out.